My topic tonight, the elephant in the room, it comes from that expression that people tiptoe around the elephant in the room and don't talk about it. It's hard to talk about, and so people avoid dealing with it. And it's always the most important conversations that are the most difficult. If they weren't that important, they wouldn't be that difficult. It's not hard to talk about the weather. It's not hard to tell someone how wonderful they are. It is hard to deal with real problems, critical problems. And the more important the problem, the more difficult it is. You know, employers will recognize that. It's very easy to give someone a great performance review. It's very difficult to tell someone, hey, you know, what you're doing is not good, and we have to change this or else. Those are the conversations that everybody avoids. You know, the problem person, we'll call him, avoids, and the person who needs to communicate this avoids it. Just speaking about the workplace, often these evaluations get put off and put off and put off. Well, maybe they'll get better this month. Maybe I won't have to tell them this bad news, et cetera, et cetera. And so the most important conversations are always the most difficult. And if you find that you're avoiding dealing with a conversation, then think about it, and you'll probably realize that this is actually the most important thing that needs to be talked about. Also want to tell you about conscious defenses versus unconscious defenses. Denial, which is not just a river in Egypt, is an unconscious defense. What it means is you've actually convinced yourself and you believe what you're saying or what you're denying. And you're not consciously aware that it's ridiculous. For example, someone who has 10 drinks and is convinced that they're safe to drive, that may be completely unconscious denial. If they are consciously aware of it, then that's denying. They're just saying, hey, leave me alone, don't bother me, I can drive home. I don't want to have to take a cab, etc. A third point that I want us to get tonight is that if you think you know someone, realize this: that person with a problem, we'll call them a problem person, has been studying you and studying your weaknesses twice as hard as you know them. And why is that? Because to maintain a problem behavior that you're aware of, you've got to be a master of concealment, avoidance, to keep that going. And people mistakenly call it denial, but if someone's consciously aware that they have a problem and they're actively, consciously avoiding it, then they're studying you and studying your weaknesses. There can be unconscious denial and avoidance as well, that the person doesn't realize it. But often these conversations don't happen because you have honestly tried many times, and the person has been able to successfully change the subject, put it on you, or if all else fails, just attack you. And so realize that the person has been studying you and knows you well enough to know your weaknesses. For therapists, and we have a child psychiatrist here, thank you. For therapists, our own unconscious process comes to play as well. And we may avoid dealing with difficult subjects. Most therapists, when they first start private practice, have trouble talking about money, for example, because to talk frankly about money is to say, hey, my services are important and worth it, and I have to get paid to keep the lights on, and you know, it's a difficult subject to talk about. Also, very painful subjects like early childhood trauma, et cetera. And if you know your patient and know that this is really going to hurt them, you may, you know, out of kindness or just your own unconscious process, avoid dealing with that. And that's where supervision comes in. And I supervise my therapists, and they also are allowed and encouraged to point out my own unconscious process. And I ask them, usually I'll say something like, you know, I really like this patient, am I missing something? And they usually point out 3 things at least that I'm missing. So they help me as much as I help them. It's important that we don't keep avoiding dealing with the elephant in the room out of our own discomfort. And finally, I want you all to be able to have a win-win conversation and actually talk about what they don't want to hear about. And that could apply to chemical dependency or drug and alcohol problem. It could apply to any relationship, friendship. You know, my tennis buddies, if I'm late for tennis, they don't hesitate to tell me how miserably worthless I am. And it's helpful because the next time I don't forget. So that's a relatively easy conversation, but also they're not bashful. So why are these important conversations so difficult? Because it's so important to talk about serious problems, the problem person will do anything to avoid it. And I've seen amazing avoidance. The bigger and more important the problem, the bigger and more fantastic the avoidance. And again, we will avoid dealing with uncomfortable issues also. Then denial, and I mentioned this before, if it's an unconscious thing, the person has convinced themselves that they don't really have a problem. Often they will convince someone else, and then that will verify in their mind they don't really have a problem. You know, they wanted me to go to rehab, but my daddy says I'm fine. You know, that's a song lyric paraphrase. But if you can convince your daddy that you're okay, or your boyfriend, or then you're okay. Then everything else that you've heard is not important because one person believes your excuses. And often it comes down to their girlfriend, their wife, their husband, their boss, the police officer that arrested them, or their therapist are all either out to get them. It's an amazing conspiracy, all these people. They're just unfair. You know, they are really unfair. Just because I was driving the wrong way on the freeway, they put me in jail. It's so unfair. Or they're crazy and imagining things. My wife is just crazy. You know, she imagines that I have a problem, but she is just way out to lunch. And or they're incompetent. You know, you as a therapist, you're incompetent, just like those last 3 therapists were incompetent. All of you people. And this denial is based on the fact that, hey, my view of the universe is absolutely true and accurate, and everyone else is wrong. I'm the only sane person in the world, and everyone else is crazy. And this is a very popular view. It's a narcissistic view, and we would all like to cling to that. And sometimes the bigger the problem, the more tenaciously we cling to these excuses. I feel like Marco Rubio here with getting a drink, but keeps my vocal cords going. So denying, as opposed to denial, is conscious, and it's practiced. And often, the denier is quite the expert. They've had a lifetime of practice. And because we want to believe them, we go into our own denial. I went through this with a patient. Guy, I had treated him from the time he had very severe problems with alcohol and depression, etc. He's one of my favorite patients. You know, he'd done really well. And one day he shows up to my office, and I said, "Smells like you've been drinking." And he said, "Oh, you know, I was on the elevator, and there was a guy on the elevator who really reeked of alcohol. Smelled like a distillery. And I think I just carried some of that with me when I walked into your office. I just got off the elevator." And I said, "Oh, okay." I mean, I feel like an idiot telling this story about myself. But 15 minutes later, I said, "You know, you still smell like alcohol." and he just said, "No, I don't know why you're saying that. You know, this is really hurting my feelings. You know, we've had such a good relationship." And the third time I said, "You know, I think we need to do a breathalyzer test." And at that point, he said, "Okay, you got me. I've had 5 drinks. I relapsed. 2 weeks ago, I've been drinking every day. I haven't been going to work, et cetera, et cetera." But the first 2 times, I really wanted to believe it. Especially the first time. I just thought, well, my nose is completely wrong because that smells like Johnny Walker Red, you know. And I wanted to buy into it. So our own denial comes in, and especially in someone we love, someone we care about, and that can be a patient, that can be, you know, a loved one. And so you say to yourself, well, maybe I'm wrong, or maybe I'm overreacting. You know, maybe I really didn't smell alcohol. Maybe it's cologne. Maybe it's throat lozenges, et cetera, you know. And for me, having a little breathalyzer, it's a big advantage now. But, you know, you can get them from Costco for $40 or $50. So, you know, it's helpful. And, you know, sometimes people who don't really have an alcohol problem, but they need to know if they're safe to drive, should test themselves. And it's so inexpensive now, there's no reason not to have it. You know, all the police officers have it, so you should check yourself. And then, when all else fails, they will attack your weaknesses. You know, you never really cared for me. You always hated my Doberman pet, you know. You always disrespected my job. You know, something, it might be completely irrelevant, but if there's a whiff of truth to it, or if they can make you believe that maybe it's true, they've gotten you off the subject. Suddenly you're defending yourself. And with my patient, you know, he made me feel guilty because I smelled alcohol, and I felt that. So at the end of our conversation today, I want to talk about having a win-win conversation. And that doesn't mean that everybody walks out of the room happy. It means that people have been able to feel respected and able to feel that you have their best interests at heart. And again, in supervising therapists, some of the most difficult conversations may not have anything to do with chemical dependency. You may have to tell a mother, you know, you are not able to take care of your baby now. And that's a heartbreaking conversation to have. I'm going to have to call Child Protective Services and have them investigate. You know, I don't know what they're going to say, but and the way to make it a win-win, because if you say, you're a bad mother, you should be punished. you know, they will never talk to you again, you know, and rightfully so. But if you say, you know, I know you want to be a good mother. I know you love your child. And what you're doing now might be putting your child in danger, and I know you don't want that. So we need to work together to make sure that everybody's safe. You, the baby, everybody. And in that way, you know, it's a very brief, very short example. You point out how it can be a win-win situation. And just an autobiographical note, I started dealing with addiction problems when I was a resident at UCSD. And it was my moonlighting job. And those of you that didn't go to medical school, moonlighting is, those are the jobs you do on nights and weekends that are unofficial and outside of your residency to pay the bills. So I happen to have 4 children, so I had several moonlighting jobs, more than 4, not all at the same time. But I worked in a methadone maintenance clinic with severe IV heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine addicts, and alcoholics, all the basic food groups that they were using. That's what I meant to say by that. So they used everything. Don't take me too seriously. I'm irreverent half the time. But in dealing with them, and many of them were in and out of jail, really did not have my value system, and I'm this, you know, overeducated, overprivileged, middle-class kid, wet behind the ears. And also, people called me Doogie Howser because I looked too young for my age, which is embarrassing. But I tried to talk to these people, and they were tough. I mean, they were tatted up from prison, and they did not respect me at all, except I had a prescription pad, and they wanted methadone, so they respected that. But when I found a way to talk about what they wanted, you know, I really want to help you stay out of jail this time. You know, how can we work together to do that? I really want to help you avoid having your child taken away. I really want to avoid you running out of money and getting evicted all the time. How can I help you with that? When you put it in terms of what's in it for them, you can make them your ally as opposed to your opponent. And my problem at that time was I was angry with these people. You know, they were breaking the law. And I was a person who was very much oriented of following the rules, you know, college and medical school and internship and residency. And they weren't following the rules, you know, and they were getting away with it. And I had resentment about that. And guess what? That did not help me be a good therapist for them. They didn't appreciate the fact that I was angry with them. And by the way, I was afraid of them too, with some good reason. And so I kept it to myself, and I was very uncomfortable, and I hated that work until I figured out, you know what? They have a real illness, and they really need help, and I just don't know how to help them yet. And I got a little better education and started making them my ally. So that was my early education, my normie crisis is how I like to say. That's when I hit bottom. But you know, my tennis partner is a sales trainer, and he trains salesmen and tells them to be a good salesman, you need to identify what your customer needs. Forget about what you need. You know, do enough research to know what your customer needs. And if you can meet those needs, then you will make a sale. If you can't, then you are wasting your time, and you need to help them find what they need and go on to the next person. So that's true too for dealing with a serious problem. Find out what they need and how you might be able to help with that need. The reason people are more open to recovery when they hit bottom, and you've all heard that term, you have to hit bottom before you can stop drinking or stop using drugs or stop gambling or whatever it is. The reason that they're more open when they hit bottom is because that's when they finally have to admit that they need help. They need you at that moment. And that's the crisis point. Often, my staff and I need to deal with people at the crisis point. And unfortunately, it's often on Fridays, going into the weekend.
Why is that?
Yes.
That's my experience too, sorry.
Yes. Yeah,
rings
no,
a-
thank you. And with drug and alcohol problems, there's a very good reason for it. If you don't have a drug and alcohol problem, hey, Friday night, date night, you're going to go out and have a few drinks and have a good time. If you've been drinking all day already, Friday night is not going to be fun. You're going to end up blacking out. You're going to end up being at risk for getting another DUI arrest. You're going to end up either feeling sick or having an argument with someone. So it's not a fun time. And rather than face one more bad weekend, people realize, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to get help. And that's when people are open to accepting help. And then we can make an alliance with them. I want to help you avoid losing your driver's license, or I want to help you stop violating your own personal values. That to me is very strong. Everyone has a sense of integrity and their own personal values. And we know it when we're violating them, when we're letting ourselves down. You know, we feel bad if we're letting other people down, but you know, there are other people. When we're letting ourselves down, that's when we feel it very acutely. We're violating our own value system. And as doctors, psychologists, we can say, I want to help you avoid damaging your health. Often we see people and they come out of the intensive care unit with acute liver failure, hepatitis, overdoses, terrible accidents, and repetitive damage to their health. I see people, their whole face is damaged because they passed out, fell forward, and didn't instinctively put out their hands to protect their face because they were unconscious. And broken noses, broken facial bones, or just black eyes, horrible damage. It's really awful to see, especially on a woman, but it's awful to see on anyone. And that's an example of what happens if you happen to be standing up at the moment that you pass out. And you know, to help people stop losing all their money, or stop losing another job, or another marriage, or custody of their child or grandchild. Often I will see grandparents who come in crisis and say, my daughter says I cannot see my grandchild anymore because I drove drunk to the grocery store. And yeah, I cannot imagine life without seeing my grandchildren. I have to get sober. And that's a real crisis point. I think grandparent relationships are underestimated and under-respected. But often that's when people come in for treatment. And all right, let's talk about communication. We've got some time. And I want to give you some background so that when you face these difficult, elephantine, that's an adjective, conversations, you can be armed with some information about it. Communication is unavoidable. We are always communicating, verbally, non-verbally, in some capacity. Communication helps us establish relationships, maintain them, and it's a basis for healthy relationships. It's essential to express feelings, helps us get our needs met, increases our chances of survival. And if you've ever seen a baby, they communicate with their eyes. They lock eyes with you, your heart melts. You will do anything that they want. All they have to do is go, and you will go and get it for them. And so how do we transmit messages? What we say is the least important. The content of our communication is about 10 to 15% of what's communicated. Our body language is more than half. So if I am standing over you and shaking my fist, it doesn't matter that I'm saying, I love you so much. You know, I'm threatening, I'm angry, you know, that will come across as satire and not as anything loving if I have that body language. Tone and pitch are 35 to 40% of communication. Our volume, the emphasis, the inflection, the rate that we're talking, and then content, 10%, 15% at most. So that's what we say. And we all think that what we say is so important. But it's how we say it. And if you see a great actor on the screen, sometimes they don't say anything at all. Charlie Chaplin, if you ever watch silent movies, you know, communicated so well with his eyes. If you watch a foreign film and take your eyes off the subtitles, you know, you can see the actors communicate very well with their body language. And unintentional communication is really important, and that's fascinating to me. When I studied psychotherapy, it's a form of psychotherapy that's called short-term dynamic psychotherapy, and it's similar to psychoanalysis, but it's short-term and very active. And the way that we did our training was we videotaped all of our psychotherapy. And my mentor would stop the videotape at micro-expressions. And if you haven't heard that term, micro-expressions are very brief facial expressions that are so brief that they're usually missed. And if you watch for them, if somebody says, oh yeah, I really want to get a job, and then they smirk right when they say really, they smirk for 1/10 of a second, you know they don't want to get a job. They may believe that they want to get a job, but their real feelings come out unintentionally. And messages are often communicated unintentionally. We often receive messages unconsciously. And no matter what someone's saying, we may realize that it ain't necessarily so. In body language, nonverbal communications, facial expressions, the way we stand or sit, gestures, eye contact, fidgeting, and you know, police detectives think that if someone looks away that they're lying, but practiced liars know that that's what detectives are looking for, and so they will make earnest eye contact, you know, and fool them. So you can't make a lot of assumptions, but I talked about inflection, so I'll say 3 things, and they'll mean 3 completely different things. I didn't say she was stupid. I didn't say she was stupid. I didn't say she was stupid. You know, lots of different meanings there. Sarcasm comes in, et cetera, et cetera. And when I have a patient who's using a lot of sarcasm, and I happen to like the sarcastic sense of humor, et cetera, but I have to stop them and say, you need to stop the sarcasm because I need to understand what you're really feeling, and you need to understand it. And if you always use sarcasm, you never really know what you're feeling. You can always say, oh, I didn't mean that. So this needs to be a sarcasm-free zone while we're having this important conversation. And feel free, by the way, to interrupt me with questions or comments. Yeah. That was just you were just brushing your hair, weren't you? Yes.
Maybe you saw like a look of all of us like, yeah, just be real with me. I can hear your sarcasm. I was like, don't, just keep it real.
Yeah, yeah, be real, don't be
Because
ironic.
That's a cover, that's a cover.
It is.
I feel like I relate to that.
Mhm.
Like, don't cover this with, a joke or a smirk or sarcasm. Be real. And
Right.
maybe cry, because that's what this is really, I need you to be honest with me, so.
Yeah, and being real it's not easy. It can be painful, it can be hurtful, but so much more worthwhile. You can waste your whole life with fake conversations and never get to the real thing. So let's talk about communication styles. If you're passive, you show respect to others, but you don't respect yourself. You don't show that you respect yourself if you're passive. Well, maybe or maybe not. So that's a passive style. Aggressive, you respect yourself, but you show no respect to the person you're talking to. You're lecturing to them, you're disrespecting them, talking down to them, or talking over them. And that's an aggressive style. Very, very common. A lot of people think that's assertive, and it's not. Passive aggressive, you're not respecting anybody. You're not respecting yourself. You're not respecting the other person. You're just saying, I don't know what they're talking about. They're mumbling. And the person says, well, what did you say? Nothing. That's passive aggressive.
I think we all met that person.
Yes. Yes. And we've probably, most of us, been that person.
Mhm, that too.
And especially if, it's painful to be really assertive and real. It hurts. They might not like me. They might get angry. They might hurt me. Very real issues. Assertive communication respects the person you're talking to, and you respect yourself. You don't have to lose your self-respect to make it a win-win conversation. So when I pointed out to my patients, as long as you're shooting up heroin, the cops can arrest you at any time. You're on probation. They can pick you up at any time. And yes, it's unfair, and yes, the cops are, they suck. I would say that to lie with them. I didn't believe that. But I wasn't disrespecting myself. I was just forming an alliance. But you're making yourself a target. You're going and buying drugs. You are putting yourself at risk. Life would be a lot better if you didn't keep doing that to yourself. And I'd like to help you do that. So I'm forming an alliance. I'm respecting them, but I'm not losing my own self-respect. I'm tweaking it a little bit. So communication styles, with assertive communication, my rights count and so do yours. With passive, my rights aren't important. I'll bow to your rights. With aggressive, I don't care about your rights. And with passive aggressive, nobody really gets respected. So if you act passively, you back down, you give in, you walk away, stay silent. Silent treatment can be passive, it can be passive aggressive also. avoid eye contact, and you allow your rights to be violated while you're stuffing your feelings and not saying what needs to be said. And the impact is you resent that person who violates your rights, and you're angry with yourself for not standing up for yourself. And you're anxious because your life feels out of control, and in fact it is out of control if you are closely involved with a person who is using drugs and alcohol. You know, the definition of insanity is using drugs and alcohol over and over and expecting a different outcome. And it's also being married to someone who's doing that, or a close friend to someone, or sometimes a therapist to someone. Can make you feel out of control as a therapist. You know, they are actively self-destructing, and you seem powerless to do anything about it. If you act aggressively, you dominate, humiliate, attack. And it's a defense mechanism. It's like the pit bull, you know, snarling at the gate to keep people away from you. It doesn't show any respect for the other person. And the impact is that you are alienated from others. You know, there's a wall between you and other people, and people either fear you or hate you, or both. And you end up blaming everyone else but yourself. Passive-aggressive behavior, you know, we talked about, but you know, it's muttering, it's fear that someone will be mad at you, and you become alienated as well, and powerless and resentful. Passive-aggressive people usually have a lot of resentment, and they never get to talk about their real issues, and they don't understand why no one knows what their real issues are. Assertive communication allows you to stand up for your rights in a respectful way. Express your feelings and thoughts clearly. And don't devalue yourself. Don't disrespect yourself. So that's the issue. Being assertive is not being aggressive. And it's not the opposite of being passive. It has more to do with mutual respect. So you're thinking about your needs, and you're thinking about the other person's needs. And we're going to show some examples of communication styles.
One thing?
Sure.
So I wanted to kind of point out that I've heard of some really interesting themes in how we talk about it, like the cover and kind of a blanket that's covering up the pain, even though that's what's on the outside, maybe sarcasm or anger, humor, and things like that. And just because they're defenses and walls, we don't necessarily need to think of these things as being bad or that we're not doing the right thing, rather than really protecting ourselves, because underneath it usually there is a lot of pain. And so when we think of defenses, we want to think of it as ways of trying to protect yourself, because it probably worked at some point. It probably served a purpose at some juncture in your life. Now it might not be working so great. So now it's a time to kind of do some fine tuning, look at how you've been doing things and how you can do things better. It's not that you have to throw out everything you learned about communication, rather kind of build on what you already have going and understand what purpose it serves. And that's going to help you be more present and able to kind of empathize or put yourself in the person's shoes whom you're speaking with. Because they may have a lot of hurt underneath the substance use. One way of looking at substance use is an adaptive response to traumatic experiences. So if I've been hurt, if I've been traumatized, if I have a lot of pain I haven't looked at yet, I may be so terrified of letting anybody else see it that I may attack them even though all I want is their help. So that's one way of being able to sit with the discomfort that comes up when you have these very challenging conversations.
I don't want to get hit here, but all right. you know, the car is really damaged. I mean, the headlight and the grill is smashed. You know, maybe somebody hit it in a parking lot or something, but,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
it's,
that might be it. I mean, I don't know, I didn't notice it when I.
it's like the third time
You
it's
sure you didn't
happened.
take it out though? I think you actually took it out last night to go get something from the store or something. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it was a parking lot. I mean,
Yeah, you're right.
I'm the better driver of the two of us, so.
Well, yeah, maybe you're right. Okay. And I'll tell you, I feel frustrated playing this person. You know, this is a sucky person to have to play. And,
You don't like chatting with me.
no, not you. I'm saying what it feels like to be me in this conversation. Because I'm giving away all my power. I'm getting disrespected. You know, the darn car's been wrecked 3 times now. So,
And I was never responsible.
yes. And I got blamed for it. And that really bites. So, yeah, that's what I was feeling there. Okay.
Guesses on his communication style?
Yeah. Anyone?
Yeah.
Passive. Yeah. I was giving away all my power, showing no respect for myself.
Any guesses for me? I was kind of passive, but also a little aggressive too.
Yeah.
You were either in denial or denying, but you very well switched roles and saying it's your fault.
Whoa.
Maybe it is. Okay. Damn it, the car is wrecked. You did it. I'm sick of it.
Yeah, I don't even know why
I'm-
you're speaking
I'm-
to me
I'm-
right
I'm-
now.
I'm
After
never
everything
gonna
you've been
drive
putting me
again.
through,
Never.
how many times do I have to make the bed in the morning? And I'm constantly seeing your dishes in the sink.
That's it. Get out.
You get out.
No, you're.
You get out. Go live with that crazy mother of yours.
But you have to mention my mother.
I have to bring up the mom and mama. You know.
So I'm aggressive, and of course I underestimated who I was dealing with. She was equally aggressive. She just raised to my level right away. And you know, there's no possibility of peace. Somebody's got to move out. Somebody's got to be damaged in some way. It's either going to be violence or separation. And if one or both of us are drunk, violence is often what happens.
Well, excuse me, what do you call that when you're, you know, it's obvious that she wrecked the car and she turns the tables on you to accuse you of a bunch of bull crap that's out in the
Yeah.
country, so what do you call that?
Well, she's equaling my level of aggression. She's changing the subject. She's attacking me and my mother. And
Very much a displacement of blame in order to draw attention away from what actually is
Displacement
happening.
of blame.
yeah.
Yeah, so I'm taking it from me taking it on because I've obviously crashed the car. So this is when I kind of talked about how we kind of cover up the pain. So maybe I woke up, realized I did crash the car last night. I'm exceptionally embarrassed because this is like the 6th time I've done it and I know it's going to hurt his feelings. But I'm not ready to look at that yet. So instead of look at that, I protect myself by going, well, but you know what? I deserve to drink. You know, look at what you put me through. You know, what kind of a person are you to live with? You know, you can tell me I can't have a glass of wine and go for a drive, you know, after work, you know. So that's me taking it off of my responsibility. I'm no longer responsible for my actions. I placed it on him.
I feel like you push it off like it was an accident,
Yeah.
but you leave a mess
Mm-hmm.
all the time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know,
Jump straight to the
this is an accident, now let's stop it, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
And you know, she never denied it. She didn't
But
say,
you
I didn't
get
crash the
mad
car.
about
She
this.
just said, maybe you did. Maybe someone in the parking lot did. You know, she's cagey that way. And,
Typical.
yeah. And, you know, so she actually didn't lie about anything. She just deflected. Well, Did you have a nice drive home last night, dear?
Oh, oh yeah, I had a great drive home there, sweetheart. But you wouldn't know because you didn't come home until about 2 in the morning, even though I was calling you all day. Where were you? Did you have a nice evening last night, my love?
Cars worked again.
Is there something you'd like to say to me? No, I didn't think you did. I'm going to bed. I don't even know why I put up with this anymore.
Wow. Passive aggressive does not work on this lady. And she was, I think you were passive aggressive back at me, but you took it to me and disengaged right away, and lots of good maladaptive communication going on here. God, you're awful.
I'm a mess.
All right. Now this is the hard part. This is hard for me now to imagine because I want to show you assertive communication. And so first of all, do not have this conversation when she is drunk. It will irritate her and she'll forget it tomorrow. Or she can claim that she forgot it. Either way, it's deniability. And I have learned this, it only took me about 500 times. Don't argue with a drunk. If you have to just agree with them to get them to shut up and go to bed, agree with them. You can always say, yeah, I agreed with you because you were drunk and I didn't want to talk with you anymore. The next morning, you can say, well, that's when you can have the conversation. You can say, hey, are you okay to talk? Can we talk for a minute?
I have a bit of a headache today. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, I'm sorry. But yeah, there's something we need to talk about. And, all right. I looked at the car and actually sent a picture to the insurance company. They say it's like $2,000 worth of damage. And, this is the third time. And I hate to see this keep happening to you.
Yeah, well, I've been kind of stressed with everything, around the house, and I've just been feeling really overwhelmed. And,
I'm really sorry you're feeling like that. And of course, the stress from these accidents is really awful too, because you don't have your car and your insurance rates go up, and I know it's hard on you. It's humiliating, isn't it?
yeah, well, I just feel like I've been drinking more and more lately, more than I intend to. It starts with just, never glass of wine, and then all of a sudden I'm drinking like 2 bottles. I just don't know what else to do. I don't know how else to deal with everything that's been going on.
I'm really sorry. I know that's not your intention to do this, but it sounds like it's kind of getting beyond your control. Maybe you need some help.
What, like AA? You think so?
Well, there is help, and I want to help you so you don't have to feel overwhelmed and have to go through this over and over.
Can I at least think about it?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's great. Think about it and let me know what you think. Maybe tonight at dinner?
Yeah.
I'll make sure I'm home at 5, so we'll have a chance to talk.
Oh.
So, how did I do?
Great.
Yeah. And I felt a lot of empathy for her. I wasn't blasting her, I wasn't being mealy-mouthed, I was trying to understand her. And, and I felt bad for her. But I also felt like, hey, there's a possibility for help. And this is, people ask me, why in the world do you deal with addiction problems? And my answer is because it's so wonderful to see people when they can turn their lives around. They can literally go from a fatal illness with a very high risk for either lifelong damage or death to an extremely effective person, maybe more effective than me, maybe more spiritually enlightened than me. And I've seen that over and over. And that's wonderful. You know, treating diabetes, you don't get that kind of success. I started off in internal medicine, and this is, you get a lot more successful outcomes. So let's go to the next step. We've done the car crash. So let's quickly go through our 4 kinds of communication about another issue. Okay. Gotta get myself into character. Honey, I hate to bring it up, but you lost your driver's license and you got fired from your job, and I really think maybe you should go into treatment.
Well, honey, who would be taking care of you and cleaning the house and taking care of everything? I mean, my place is here with you. I mean, I appreciate you, thinking of me and everything. But, I think maybe you want to just focus on yourself right now. Because, I think you've been under a lot of stress at work. But don't worry about home. I got it all covered.
You're right. It is stressful now.
You always do. It's fine. It's not a big deal.
So that's not getting me where I want to go. And, okay. I've had it. You have to go to treatment.
You're
the one with the problem. You
Me,
better do something about it, or else.
Yeah. Let's talk about what I found on your credit card bill, huh? You want to start throwing stones? Let's talk about your extracurricular activities, sir. Business trip.
What?
Business trip. I'm so sure. Don't talk to me.
Yeah. I believe that. I want to see the statement.
Right?
And I was feeling guilty, and I was wondering, what did I do?
Credit card fraud.
Yeah. Okay. If you're not going to get treatment, then I don't know. I don't want to do this anymore.
What are you talking about?
Well, you've had all these problems. You keep losing jobs and wrecking your car, and this just isn't. This is
You divorcing me?
No, I wouldn't say that. Just.
What exactly is it that you are saying? You're saying nothing. You're saying absolutely nothing, just like always. All right, why don't you get your thoughts together and talk to me later?
Bam. Bam. Yeah. I know. God. All right. You should do role playing before you marry anybody.
Show me how aggressive you can really get.
Yeah.
Let me see level 10.
Yeah. All right. It's 5 o'clock. I just got home from work. How you doing? How'd you do today?
Oh, yeah, pretty good. Just kind of hanging out, having a few glasses of wine, cleaning the house. Doesn't it look nice? I've done like 8 loads of laundry today.
The house looks perfect, but
And I made you a really great dinner.
Thank you. But we started talking about something important this morning.
Right.
How'd you feel
Right.
about that?
I kind of, okay, I was thinking about it.
Oh,
And I
good,
told
thanks.
myself I wasn't going to have a drink today. I wasn't going to do it. And then, I thought, I'm just going to get the house picked up, and keep myself busy. And then without even thinking about it, because, I like to drink my wine when I'm cleaning the house. And so I've had about a half a bottle, but, I'm going to stop right there.
Well, that's what we talked about this morning. You said sometimes you can't stop, and
Yeah.
it's caused you a lot of stress. It's caused you a lot of problems. I feel really bad about what you've been going through with this.
I mean, it's just a couple classes. I stopped, you know.
Sure, but, you know, at some point, we need to look at what we can do to help you so your life can be better. You know, you lost that job, and I'm afraid you're gonna lose your driver's license after this accident.
I don't end up in jail.
Yeah, no, that would be terrible. I don't want that. Nobody wants that. So,
Well, can you just at least I'm gonna go take a shower, I'm gonna sober up, drink some water. Do you mind just getting the wine out of the house while I do that?
sure, I'll do that for you. And I mean, does it bother you if I drink in front of you?
Gosh, I don't even know yet. I mean, I think I'll be okay, but maybe just not for a little bit.
That's great. You know, if I'm asking you to make a change, I'll make a change. But I think it would be better for you if we could get some help for dealing with this. And I need some help too. I'm gonna do something about it for myself.
I mean, it's not just me, you know. I
Yeah.
mean, things have not been the same these last couple of years.
Well, I agree with you. And, you know, I don't know, you know, what my part is in that, but I'm willing to look at it. You know, this treatment program has a family program, and, you know, I want to go to that.
You'll come to that with me?
Absolutely.
I'm not bringing my mother.
Well, you know,
For right now, I'm just saying no.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
might think about it later, but right now, I cannot handle that woman in my life.
we don't have to worry about that now. I just want you to get what you need, okay? Because I care about you. All right. So we're gonna have a hug here pretty soon if we keep going, but, which I would be okay, except I have this cold and, but you know, I think Nicole, well, she challenged me a little bit, which is to be expected, but I responded, everything I said was trying to figure out what would be good for her. And taking my own ego out of it, taking my own anger out of it, and just focusing on, you know, what she needs. And I think that's the secret. And it's not easy to do, especially if this person has really pissed you off, you know. Call a friend and talk about how pissed off you are, but don't lead the conversation with the person about them. You know, with the person you need to be, and you don't need to be sappy about it, but you know, I think I talked about the problems in a realistic way, but then pointed out how it would be in her best interest to get help. And so, you know, that's what we are trying to do when we get patients into treatment. And that's what happened. People come in through that door and they expect me to be Marquis de Sade, you know, just the torture chamber. And they talk about how, you know, I just expected your counselors to be beating up on me, and, you know, I heard this was a tough program, and, you know, but everyone is trying to help me, and they're surprised. And, you know, we don't just tell everybody that everything is okay, don't worry, be happy. But we try to form an alliance and be on their side. And, you know, assertive beliefs, we're equally entitled to express ourselves respectfully. That was the communication at the end. Yeah. She realized that she had choices, and she was considering her options. You realize that you can't control the other person. You can control yourself. You can keep yourself from being aggressive or being passive, and try to meet the person halfway. And placing a high priority on having my rights respected. I tell parents all the time, wait a minute, you get cussed out by your child, things literally thrown in your face, hit, assaulted, injured, and you don't do anything about it? And the parent says, well, they get really angry with me. And you know, what I say is, you have a right to be treated with respect in your own home. You have a right not to be afraid when you go home of your own child. And for a lot of parents, this is like, that's crazy talk. What is he talking about? And well, I'm thinking of one person. She was very sick, wasn't imaginary. Ulcerative colitis, she'd had most of her gastrointestinal system removed. Very, very sick from like age 7. And all in and out of the hospital, on a lot of steroid medications, which can make you crazy. The parents felt horrible. They felt guilty. They actually said, Mom said, you know, it's on my side of the family and I just feel horrible that I passed this down to her. And I said, wait a minute, stop right there. You didn't intentionally cause this illness in your child. You know, you were born with it. You found out about it after your child got it. Stop beating yourself up. You know, it does no one any good. And your daughter is raging and hitting you, and this is horrible. The daughter was addicted to opiate pain medications that she was prescribed very legitimately. She had horrible pain, but it's been going on for 10 years. She's 17 now. The opiates are not helping anymore. And as we found out, they were actually making it worse, because every time she went into opiate withdrawal, her gastrointestinal symptoms got much worse. She had horrible pain. She needed more opiates. Vicious cycle. We stopped the opiates. We got her onto Suboxone. Guess what? All the symptoms went away. We knocked off 5 other medications that weren't necessary anymore. And unbelievably, I still can't believe it. This, you know, The Exorcist, where the little girl's head spins around and green, you know, pea green soup, projectile vomiting and all that. That's the way this kid was. She got off opiates. She was a sweet girl. And it's stunning. And these parents were just whip dogs. And they met with me 3 or 4 times before they even talked to the daughter about getting treatment, because they were afraid of her. They were afraid if they did something to stress her out, it would make her sick. She'd be back in the hospital. She'd be shrieking at them and blaming them, and they would feel horrible. And they were emotionally held hostage and blackmailed. So
At the end of that case, did the daughter, now 17 years old, did she realize how
crazy she was?
not her, but how her parents, did she see that she maybe had a role in helping her parents? They were as involved in the problem as she was.
You know,
That would have been
ironically,
an amazing change.
she's a very bright kid. She had no insight. She was so much under the influence of very powerful opiate medications. She didn't know what she was doing. When she came out of it, it's like she regained consciousness. And she said, what the hell have I been doing for the last 10 years? She, you know, went back to school and she got a job. She has so much more freedom and self-respect now. And it really is amazing. It's one of these stories that I can't believe. She's 19 now. I can't believe that this is true. Every time I see her, I just,
How do you attack a problem like that? Do you start with the parents, or do
Yeah.
you start with the child, or where do you start?
start with the parent. The parents came in and said, you know, there's hypodermic syringes all over the room. She keeps ordering them online. We think maybe she's abusing her medications. And I said, maybe? You know, she's got Dilaudid, she's got all these things that you can inject. She's injecting into her central line, and which, by the way, if you don't use perfect technique, you put germs right into your heart and brain. And I said, this is a life-threatening situation, not just from overdose, but from infection. And by the way, Nicole, in addition to being a psychologist, is a nurse. So she knows all the medical jargon that I talk about.
Is that person still maintaining on Suboxone?
Yes. Suboxone, an antidepressant, which helps with her anxiety disorder. She still has significant anxiety, but no recent panic attacks.
What kind of medication for anxiety?
Cymbalta, it's an antidepressant, and that's it now. And the Suboxone. I think that she is off, yeah, I'm sure that she's off benzodiazepines now. That was a struggle as well. But, I mean, it's a Jekyll and Hyde transformation, and she doesn't have much insight as to what she was like. You know, and this is where we really need to set up videotape. Because that it's so important to be able to show people, this is your 10-second tape of when you first walked in. And because people don't really realize, especially when they're under the influence. So that's it now. And the Suboxone. I think that she is off, yeah, I'm sure that she's off benzodiazepines now. That was a struggle as well. But, I mean, it's a Jekyll and Hyde transformation, and she doesn't have much insight as to what she was like. You know, and this is where we really need to set up videotape. Because that it's so important to be able to show people, this is your 10-second tape of when you first walked in. And because people don't really realize, especially when they're under the influence.